This region of the country is said to be a place not to relax, but a place to step out of your comfort zone. The vast beauty of this place is indescribable. It's home to some of the most breathtaking scenery in all of Vietnam. It's filled with winding roads through majestic mountain passages, lush greenery, steep canyons, and friendly locals. It has engraved an image, a memory, and a feeling that's become nostalgic and synonymous of adventure that I've since tried to recapture wherever I travel. In order to truly appreciate the beauty of this place, one must explore it firsthand, and it should be on two wheels. However, motorbiking these parts is not for the faint of heart. While the landscape is mesmerizing and memories become romanticized, traveling is not always fun, pretty, or exciting. At times, it's difficult, exhausting, chaotic, and sometimes outright dangerous. While most of the roads are paved, there are lengthy stints of uneven terrain where dirt, mud, and gravel ebb and flow with the pathway, as well as fluctuating harsh conditions and debris. This isn't for your typical tourist who look for comfort. It's for the adventure seekers, risk takers, and ones willing to tough it out no matter what obstacle comes their way. Motorbiking Vietnam is a rite of passage from ordinary traveler to adventurer. It's for those with an aspiration, a desire, and a craving to plunge into the unfamiliar and embrace it with curiosity. For the wanderers who look forward to the journey and not the destination. Upon embarking on this journey, I promised myself no matter what happens, whether I end up breaking down on the side of the road, get injured, or sick, I'm willing to face the consequences and walk miles on end and do whatever I gotta do to reach the next village, the next destination, as long as I keep moving forward. From Hanoi to the city of Ha Giang, one can either take a sleeper bus, private shuttle, or rent a motorbike. It's about a 6 to 7 hour ride, so expect to spend the whole day getting here, or splitting it into 2 days by motorbike. Taking a sleeper bus rather than motorbiking gives you the benefit of being well rested before setting off on two wheels the following morning. The pods on the shuttle were clean and comfortable. It comes with an adjustable bed, AC, TV, and a USB charger. You also have curtains for privacy as well as a blanket. Shoes are not permitted on the sleeper bus. You'll have to take them off and put them inside a plastic bag which they hand out. There are no restrooms inside the bus, but there is a rest stop halfway where you'll be able to use the restroom, get something to eat, as well as buy snacks and beverages. Sleeper bus costs around $29 one way and can be booked through bookaway.com once you're in the country. For additional information, check the description below. I took a sleeper bus on this trip and I had no regrets, but I would rent a motorbike in Hanoi and just ride north to Ha Giang or Sapa next time around. The feeling of freedom, having the ability to stop and go, just takes your journey to another level. Make sure to have the address with you of where you want to get dropped off or the name of the place, because the bus driver will ask you as you approach Ha Giang. Ha Giang City lies in the center of the province that shares its name and runs along the Low River. It acts as a gateway to this region. It's home to roughly 55,000 inhabitants, composed of 22 different ethnicities, with a majority of them being Kin and Tay. Lodging throughout the province is quite affordable, with resorts starting at $80 a night, hotels at $10, Airbnbs at $20 a night for an entire place, hostels around $8 for a dorm and $15 for a private room, while guest houses and homestays start around $4. From my experience, they are the most common accommodations you'll find, especially in the rural villages. However, companies are capitalizing on the homestay trend, where hotels are branded as homestays. Something to keep in mind if you're looking for an authentic homestay experience and want to support local families in villages. The majority of motorbikes in the country range from 50 to 150 cc's. With the mountainous terrain, either get a semi-auto or a manual, but never an automatic. You're setting yourself up for failure, and you're putting your life in danger when climbing and descending. I named this little Honda Belle, since I kept pressing on the horn every chance I got. She's a 125cc semi-auto Honda Future, and she handled every terrain I put her through, from paved to gravel and dirt. If you've never ridden before, find an empty parking lot or anywhere with less traffic and just ride around until you get the hang of it. While one can certainly overcome most obstacles in a 110, if you're a novice rider, I don't recommend anything under 125 cc's. In Ha Giang, the 3 places I recommend renting a motorbike from are QT motorbikes, style motorbikes, or ticket motorbikes. While there are plenty of places to rent from, and chances are you'll be fine with any of them as long as you read the reviews, these are the 3 I'm comfortable recommending. They either have a great selection of bikes, they're honest, they're fairly priced, or all of the above. I highly recommend packing light, especially if you're using a small scooter. Just bring what you need, and you can leave the rest of your gear at the rental place. If you're ending at a different location, I'd still try to pack as light as possible. I had 3 bags with me. I usually travel with only 2 at the most, but my 3rd bag had all my riding gear. The weight of the bike and the location will greatly impact your maneuverability in the coming terrain. Regarding safety gear, I would bring a helmet, riding gloves, and closed ankle boots from your home country. And don't forget to bring a bandana or a face mask so you aren't breathing all the debris and pollutants while you're riding. But most of all, a helmet. The helmets here don't offer much protection and they're too small. I'd also get one with a visor and a face shield. For a complete gear list, check out my Essentials on Motorbiking Vietnam video in the description below. As I ride further from the city, the scenery becomes otherworldly. Every turn, the landscape is more awe-inspiring than the last, to a point where I found myself constantly stopping. Unless you have quite some time, you don't need to frequently stop at the beginning of your ride. The scenery becomes exponentially mesmerizing the further you roam these roads. And the best is yet to come. Ha Giang is one of the poorest regions in the country. However, in recent years, there has been attempts to establish a manufacturing industry, which the infrastructure has vastly benefited from. Because of its highly mountainous landscape, much of it isn't suitable for agriculture. Though the central plateau is good for growing plums, peaches, and tea, which the province exports. Because of the increased quality of the roads, it has also seen a growth in tourism, mainly from foreigners motorbiking and exploring the Ha Giang Loop. On day 1, I made my way to Tam Son, which is about 32 miles away from Ha Giang City. It's about a 2-hour ride non-stop, but with sightseeing, a good full day's ride is a good starting point. If you have more time, then you can explore more side streets and trails along the way. Before arriving in the country, a foreigner did cause a fatal collision and ended up hitting a kid playing on the street. So the local authorities were strict about foreigners motorbiking in the region, which led to many getting pulled over, fined, or even getting their motorbikes confiscated if they didn't have the proper paperwork to show. So slow down, be cautious, and don't rush. It's not a race. Traffic is slow here, averaging around 40 kilometers an hour. Which is why I believe Vietnam is a great country to learn how to ride a motorbike. And to be honest, I feel more comfortable riding here than in the States. Drivers here are more astute to motorbikes on the road. Aside from encountering teenagers on motorbikes speeding past you with no regards to safety, chances are you'll probably be the fastest one on the road. One can visit Ha Giang most of the year, as it's beautiful year-round. The region has a humid subtropical climate, which brings hot and humid summers and cool mild winters. April till June is pleasant and warm, with July to August being hot with regular monsoons. September to November tend to be a good time to visit with cooler temperatures, with the high season being in November during the Buckwheat Flower Festival. I experienced moderate temperatures, a split of overcast to sunny skies with intermittent rain in the later parts of May. From February till June, these parts are also engulfed in a thick layer of haze. They are the symptoms that are present during the smoky season, when farmers burned old crops in the field to make way for new cultivation. Although I caught it in the tail end of the season, the air was still congested with dense smoke that at times made it difficult to breathe. Bac Sum Pass is often shrouded in mist, and at times blanketed in a sea of clouds beneath its mountains. At the apex, one will find a torii gate situated on a vista point, where one can take a rest and admire the scenery. As you journey into this area, the changing landscape will become more apparent, with its majestic mountains and lush green forests. It is the longest hill in the province, stretching over 7 kilometers and rising more than 450 meters in elevation. With its steep roads that snake along its mountains, Bac Sum Pass attracts countless adventurous travelers annually. It offers a welcoming reward as one conquers these winding roads overlooking the valley below. Be extremely cautious as you ride up these inclines. It is steep with hairpin turns and some still without railing, and during the wet season, the road may become slippery. About 14 kilometers away, past the many vistas, is the Quan Heaven Gate. It's situated at a height of 1,500 meters above sea level. This vantage point offers a panoramic view of pristine forests, majestic mountains with roads that serpent through the landscape. As you transit these roads, you'll come across these small shops and cafes on the side of the road. They offer a great place for a quick rest, bathroom break, a bite to eat, and to try local coffee. And let me tell you something about the coffee here. It's second to none, at least in my humble opinion. Vietnam is actually the second largest coffee exporter in the world at 29 million kilograms, only behind Brazil, which boasts 66 million. Out of all the coffee I've drank in countries I've visited, including Colombia, Guatemala, and Peru, the best are nestled along the highway of Ha Giang. Though most of the coffee production in Vietnam is concentrated in the Central Highlands, which make up about 80% of the production. Vietnamese coffee has exceeded my expectations. I never liked it back in the States. It's overly sweet with a synthetic taste to it, and it usually leaves me with a headache, so I never get it. However, the coffee here is quite different. It's sweet, but also feels balanced with a bold flavor. And the best ones I've had are situated all along the highways of Ha Giang. So make sure to have a cup or 10 along your journey. These highway cafes are legit. It's one of the more memorable experiences I still have today about this region. I've met quite a few locals on these coffee breaks. It also gives you a chance to support the local area and the families that run these shops. After admiring the site at Heaven Gate, I ride on to Tam Son, about 4 kilometers away. Riding these roads through these scenic passages feels like it was built to be ridden on 2 wheels. There's just something about riding a motorcycle. Having the fresh air hit you and the freedom it brings as you ride endlessly with no particular destination in mind. As you get closer to town, you'll be greeted with a flawless view of the picturesque countryside. One that should not be missed. This town lies in the valley surrounded by the Dong Van Karst Geopark. Tam Son is a small agricultural town immersed in rice terraces, which on certain parts of the year is overwhelmed by vast scenic greenery. Though small, it offers a place to rest, sleep, eat, and of course, drink coffee. Looking at this vantage point, it's perplexing how there are relatively small mountains scattered throughout this plateau, like small bumps on the Earth's skin. While in the city, the traffic is chaotic, here in the countryside, it's quite the opposite. The feeling of openness and carefree is at its prime. Just be sure to watch out for buses, trucks, and vans. The bigger the vehicle, the more it has the right of way. And make sure to honk your horn multiple times going around blind corners to let other drivers know you're there. It seriously can mean life or death. These truckers and bus drivers will just go zipping by you like you aren't even there, and a lot of them drive on the opposite side of the road, even through blind corners. When in doubt, honk your horn. As you approach each village and townships, you'll be greeted with these arcs and welcome signs along with the town name and communist symbolism. Along the northern parts of the country, communist flags and symbolism are more prevalent, but as I rode further down south, they became less frequent. Fueled by coffee and curiosity, I kept riding past Tam Son, but if I had more time on my hands, I would have stayed the night or two and explored the surrounding vistas and side roads, if not to just take in the scenery. So I rode on and made my way past the village to Long Khoi Cave, one of the attractions to visit while in the area. It's about 5 kilometers outside of town. There are a plethora of caves in Vietnam, so I recommend visiting at least one during your journey. And I would do it towards the beginning where you have most of your energy still intact. There is this very steep incline that you have to ride up. The camera doesn't really capture how steep this road is, but it's very steep. Just keep your throttle steady and your wits about you, and you'll be good. And watch for little kids playing on the road, as the pathway does get quite narrow. Some tend to just pop out of nowhere. On the trailhead is a primitive Hmong ethnic village. None of the villagers speak English, so there is a significant language barrier. The cave is hidden on a high mountain, which is about a 30-minute hike. You'll park your motorbike here, which costs about 5,000 VND. The weather was tolerable during my visit, and I had a camelback on me. But if you don't have water, you can buy one here, from this owner. You can leave most of your stuff on your motorbike. Just make sure they're secure. The hike is moderate depending on the season, which can become strenuous by the heat and humidity. The only irritation I had was the smell of the smoke in the air. It made breathing difficult at times as I climb higher. Make sure to pace yourself, take short rests, and admire the scenery. It's quite peaceful up here, with each season having its own unique beauty. Sometimes it's passing through the ripe cornfields in the summer, or the barren rocky fields in the winter. Sometimes it's just the simple images of the local people's labor, and getting a glimpse of the daily life. I arrived later in the evening, with all the tourists and tourist groups heading down as I was climbing up, pretty much circumventing large crowds and avoiding most tourist traps. They typically come in waves, so you can avoid them by timing your ride and going in between them. Once you reach the top, you'll then pay an entrance fee to enter the cave, which includes a headlight. The entrance fee is 50,000 VND. There's also a store where you can buy water and restrooms. Once inside, it's quite easy to navigate. The cave is designed with a loop staircase to minimize slipping and easy for sightseeing. It's also maintained and well lit. Besides the beautiful stalactites and stalagmites, the cave is closely associated with spiritual life of the local Hmong people. Although the cave has existed for about 400 to 500 million years, it was only announced and developed for tourism in 2015. While it's simple to navigate through, be cautious and watch your head as some parts do get narrow. Sauntering through Long Khoi, it's definitely worth the effort, even more so as I was lucky enough to enjoy the entire cave all to myself. I've only visited a handful of caves around the world, but this is the best one I've gone to yet. This is a must visit while you're riding the loop. As you explore this cave, remember to respect the local culture and customs. Don't be too curious about them, don't touch the stalactites, and leave no trace behind. Once I made my way out of the cave, I headed back down and backtracked my way to the main road, stopping a few times to enjoy the scenery. Once I reached the main road, the mountains started to eclipse the sun, so I decided to look for a place to stay. As I decompress from the first day's ride, a feeling of tranquility settles in the air, in synchronicity with the mystic mountains and the sounds of nature. This place really blew my mind. It was a great place to end the first day with this scenery. This resort is relatively expensive compared to other options available. They offer different packages, but the one I chose sent me back 1,900,000 VND for a night, which is only $77 US. My stay here was quite peaceful, with only seeing a handful of guests, so pretty much I had the whole resort to myself. The package includes your own 2-story cottage and access to the infinity pool, which was a great place to relax, swim, take in the scenery after a long day's ride. The cottage has AC, Wi-Fi, TV, a mosquito net that surrounds the bed, an elegant bathroom, toilet, shower, and heated water. There's also a mini vault and a fridge. The package also came with a complimentary tea and breakfast. Most beds in Vietnam, at least the ones I've slept on, are very firm. I'm not quite sure what they're made out of, but it's not that comfortable to sleep on, but slightly better than sleeping on the floor. You can run into a hotel in the major cities with soft and fluffy beds, but they are an exception, not the norm. Just something to keep in mind. Since the resort is situated on a mountainside, it does get strenuous going from place to place, like the restaurant, pool, store, viewing deck, and the front office. Luckily, you do have a complimentary cart transportation around the property at your disposal. The food here is exceptional. Everything I ate was delicious. For dinner, I had a Hmong dish with pork and rice with a side of cabbage and tea. For breakfast, I had pho bo, which is beef with a choice of flat thick noodles, a side of fried eggs, and corn milk. While in the States, pho is usually eaten for dinner, here in Vietnam, it's breakfast food, but is usually eaten throughout the day. This was my first time trying corn milk and I really enjoyed it. It's served hot, a bit creamy, and sweet. I've never heard of it until now, and I definitely recommend trying it. It's pretty good. The food is delicious, savory, and the quality is excellent. And the restaurant is open later in the night, so if you happen to arrive late, you don't need to starve and wait until the next morning for your next meal. Overall, my experience here was superb. The staff was friendly, helpful, and they had someone who spoke English, which made it easier to communicate. I was thoroughly impressed with everything and I highly recommend staying here to anyone visiting Ha Giang. And it really isn't that expensive, to be honest, unless you're on a shoestring budget. The landscape here resembles that of a painting. That alone is worth staying for, not even yet mentioning all the other amenities and activities they offer. This was a great find and I'm glad I kept riding on instead of backtracking to Tam Son after the Long Koi cave. You can find more information on their website at hmongvillage.com.vn or check the description below. As the day winds down, I grab my journal, head to the pool, and reflect on the day's events, where I'm at, and what's to come. It didn't hit me how exhausted I really was until I was in the pool relaxing and floating on water. The next morning, I packed, had breakfast, and made my way to Yen Minh, about 43 kilometers away. It's about a 2.5-hour ride with stops along the way, through the main road. However, there is a faster route that's about half as long. The longer route is the old route, which takes you to Pine Forest, a diverse habitat home to many rare species. It's a popular destination to nature lovers, as one can camp underneath its canopy. And the new route passes through Lonely Tree in Can Thai. It is, however, steeper, bumpier, with more hairpin turns. Once you cross the bridge, there's going to be a fork on the road with a sign saying both pathways lead to Yen Minh. You can play it by ear and choose which way to go once you get here. At the time, I didn't know this and I wasn't in a rush, so I took the longer route. Otherwise, I would have taken the shortcut, mainly because of the hairpin turns. When in doubt, always take the side roads whenever possible. They tend to be the better option. But whichever direction you choose, you won't be disappointed. They're both scenic, and they lead you to the same destination. One can't really go wrong, especially if it's your first time riding the loop. Along the way, you'll see many rice terraces, and depending on the time of the year, one will be treated to the lush greenery of these steppes. Yen Min lies between Quang Ba and Dong Van on the southwestern edge of the plateau. The food here is especially good for the region, with a local specialty consisting of rice paper rolls and a thin sticky rice cake known as Yen Min cake. Unfortunately, I didn't reach this place until noon, which was too late to get lunch since most restaurants were already closed. But that didn't deter me from searching. I decided to ride around and explore to see what I can find that's still open. I did manage to spot what looked like to be a local market on the side street, so I flipped the UE to check it out. It looked promising from the glimpse I got, but it was empty and everything was closed down. Not sure if it's because of the time of day or if it's only open on certain days of the week, but I didn't stay here long enough to find out. Although this is a very small town, this place was more desolate than I expected. There really isn't much to do in the town itself, but a walk outside of town is highly recommended, as you're quickly transported into a truly untouched vision of rural Vietnam, completely free of tourists. A good thing to do on your journey is explore narrow side streets like these. Sometimes they can lead to something surprisingly nice, like a view, food, and sometimes they can lead to a dead end. But that's just part of the journey. After several minutes of riding, I made my way back to the main road, thinking I'd have better luck in search of food, which I eventually struck gold. I'm not gonna lie, I did luck out because I was starving. On this day, my body was slightly more stiff and I felt more of the road, but I still had quite a bit of energy. Not to mention the sun was blazing hot, so I wasn't feeling that great in the midday sun with all my gear on. As you ride through villages and towns, this is the sign to look for if you're hungry. Hom, which means fried rice. This is my go-to dish besides pho. The only people that were still eating seemed like the friends of the owners of the restaurant. This place looked like it catered to easy riders, which is probably why they still served me lunch. The meal I had was egg garlic fried rice and it really hit the spot. I wanted to keep it simple and not be too adventurous since I was still on the road. I didn't want to take a chance and get sick and delay where I was going. This is my personal rule of thumb, but I've broken it many times. But in general, or when in doubt, I stick to fried rice while I'm still on the road. After finishing my meal, I reorganized, suited up, and went on my way. Just outside of Yen Min is a fork on the road. Left continues on to QL4C and takes you north. Straight takes you to DT 182, which goes south. I was supposed to turn left and stay on QL4C, but I wasn't paying attention and went straight. The roads here are finicky, so if you don't pay attention, you'll likely miss a turn. A helpful thing to have is a phone holder on your bike, so you can check your map while riding. Unfortunately, this bike didn't have one, and I forgot to ask the rental place to add one on my bike. didn't realize I was going the wrong way until I was already in DT 176, where the road turned into dirt, and there's a massive road construction. In Vietnam, just because there's road construction doesn't mean it's closed. You can definitely go through it. You just might have to bear the rough terrain and may have to go under some machinery. At this point, I was pretty suspicious I was going the wrong way, but the adventure in me just wanted to keep going. This dirt trail was pretty fun to ride, but it was strenuous at times, especially during the muddy parts. When I realized the dirt road kept going, I eventually stopped, checked my phone, and made my way back to QL4C. I lost about an hour of precious daylight, but it's all part of the adventure. Things usually don't go according to plan. We just have to deal with it and keep moving forward. Once I got back on track, I made my way to Tam Ma. This iconic zigzagging ramp is one of the highlights of the loop, so be sure to plan ahead and get here while there's still sunlight. At the top of the ramp is a store run by local ethnic groups that live in the area. There's coffee, water, and food available if you need to re-up on energy and hydrate, as well as use the restroom. One will also encounter Hmong families and children running around at this area, which is a great opportunity for photos. This place is a stopping point for many tour groups, so depending when you get here, it might be filled with a bunch of tourists. Towards this direction is a homestay down the street, which I didn't know about until afterwards. If you arrive here later at night, you can stay here and admire the scenery the next morning. For more information, you can visit their website at tammadretreat.com. I seriously would have stayed here if I knew about it at the time. I was already exhausted at this point after going the wrong way, riding on dirt, and backtracking. This is a good reason why you should plan your route ahead. That way you know what's nearby, because cell service isn't that great up here, so an offline map is clutch to have. After enjoying the views and had a bit of rest, I continued on before making a pit stop for petrol. Vietnam runs on motorbike, so petrol stations aren't hard to find. They're everywhere. Although, rural stations tend to run out from time to time. However, many locals sell them by the liter, like this family on the side of the road right next to a petrol station. Fuel is readily available throughout the country, and it's very cheap. You don't need to bring extra fuel with you, but keep an eye on your fuel gauge. Throughout my trip, I usually fill up once it reaches half a tank. Roadside petrol in Ha Giang costs about 20 to 30,000 VND for 1 liter. Expect to spend about 50,000 a day for petrol. This is another point in the loop where the weather and climate noticeably change. It became more cloudy and overcast, significantly cooler with a nice refreshing breeze. I remember it being a sudden change while I was riding, and it gave me quite an energy boost. From here until the homestay I ended up staying at, I really enjoyed riding. The weather here was quite pleasant, the air felt fresh and cool, and there was no intense sunlight. Going downhill is significantly more dangerous than going up. This is where having a manual or semi-auto is crucial. When you're descending down a slope, keep your gears low on first or second. You can brake from time to time, but whatever you do, don't ride your brakes. That will cause the brake pads to heat up and completely wear out. At that point, you'll be barreling down the mountain with no brakes and you're gonna have a bad time. Whenever you're feeling exhausted or tired, don't be afraid to stop on the side of the road and rest on your bike or underneath a shady area. You're going to have grueling moments where it's not fun to ride. Sleep it off for about 15 to 20 minutes underneath the shady tree before heading out. There were times that I started falling asleep, but I kept pushing myself to keep going and see what's further down the road. I was caught up in the moment, and in hindsight, it wasn't a smart decision to keep riding tired. But I eventually realized early on that whatever's ahead of me can wait. Don't push your limits and your luck. That's usually when a lot of things go wrong, so know your limits and try not to break them. At this point, the sun was over the mountains, the sky was completely covered with clouds, and it was extremely getting cold with the winds piercing through my clothing and gloves. My immediate mission was to find a place to stay before it was completely dark. There are no streetlights around here, so once it's dark, the only light source is from your motorbike. Luckily, I came across this homestay in Phin. I was really glad I found this place because not only was I exhausted, but I was also starving and I needed a shower. The owner was nice and inviting, and his house was quite large. The interior layout of this place was spacious and it had feng shui. Staying here cost 100,000 VND, or $4 US a night. It's a 2-story house with an atrium in the middle. I was quite impressed by the architectural and interior design. It was clean and spotless. The room I stayed at was on the first floor, but the second floor had a line of bunk beds. The kitchen and bathroom are both located on the first floor, and there's running hot water as well as indoor plumbing. The bed, as usual, is firm and uncomfortable, but I didn't really mind it because I was exhausted. What I didn't like, however, is the room didn't have an AC unit, and it got pretty warm inside pretty quickly. After every day, don't forget to charge your electronics. Vietnam uses type A, C, and D sockets and plugs, with a standard voltage of 110 and 220 at a frequency of 15 Hz. When I arrived at this place, there was a bunch of his friends who were all teachers drinking and eating on the second floor. The owner and one other person, who I believe is an English teacher, were the only ones that knew English. Being a guest, a lot of them kept wanting to take shots with me, and I obliged. Something to keep in mind, if you keep drinking your shot, they'll keep refilling it. So if you want to pace yourself, just leave your shot glass full until you're ready to drink another one.
Oh, me? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
What?
After everyone left, I took one last shot with a local, played pool, and went to bed. The next morning, I made my way all the way to Leng Cú, the northernmost part of Vietnam. This stretch of road from Sapin to Leng Cú is mind-altering to say the least. I was lost for words riding through these passages. The landscape seems to escalate in beauty in tandem with the elevation and direction you're navigating. The region of Dong Van is about 4,500 to 5,300 feet above sea level. But as you step onto one of the vantage points overlooking the plethora of peaks, you'll realize why this region is coined the rooftop of Vietnam. This immersive landscape is quite difficult to comprehend, even when viewing it in person. So footage and pictures don't do it justice. It looks as though you're staring at a painting, and the distant mist just makes it all the more enigmatic. Civilization in this area are few and far between, but as lonely as these roads are, I saw a decent amount of vehicles going in the opposite way, so you never truly feel alone. As you motorbike Vietnam, a routine is a good thing to have. It'll save you time and add more room for sightseeing throughout the day. Double up on your routine tasks so you don't have to constantly be stopping, such as finding a place to eat, drinking coffee, going to the restrooms, and so on. Efficiency is your best friend. My first stop is usually coffee if there's none where I'm staying. I spent about 15 minutes here before I continued riding. Starting around this area until the 5th day of Ha Giang and my trip to Ninh Bình, I did lose a bunch of footage. I physically lost a couple of memory cards along my journey, totaling to about 256 gigs, and I also experienced data corruption back at home before I was able to back everything up. A graduated guess of how many clips I lost is about 500 gigabytes, which is unfortunate. I do back up my footage daily while traveling. I use a transfer hub from an SD to an SSD, but at times it's unreliable. I don't bring a laptop when I travel, but after this, I'm probably gonna start bringing one. Pretty much from here on out, the further I go, the more footage I've lost. Stuff like this usually happens. You'll experience something similar. Things get lost, misinterpreted, directions read wrong, things misplaced, and so on. As long as you still have your health and you're able to adapt to the situation and keep riding. This wasn't even the biggest hiccup that I experienced on this trip, as you'll soon find out. Dong Van is my second favorite district in Ha Giang. Its most notable feature is its elevation and its vast sea of mountains. Upon arriving, you've already witnessed the provincial elevation, but Dong Van gives you a true appreciation of its immensity. The weather during my arrival was cool and airy. I could spend weeks exploring backroads after backroads. While the body armor I'm wearing isn't necessary or needed, as I learned from the get-go, as it did greatly help against cooler temperatures and wet and windy conditions. In general, you don't need a body armor. You're probably going to end up taking it off on the second day and not wear it. But I would recommend bringing a body armor if you're planning to do some serious off-roading, trailblazing, or if you're visiting during the wet season. This region also sees snowfall, so layering up with a body armor would greatly help if you're riding in a colder season. Otherwise, the 3 riding gear I mentioned earlier should suffice. The reason why I brought body armor is because I'm motorbiking down the country. With that, you should be prepared to tackle the many different elements and weather throughout the country. You'll be passing through many villages. I would keep track of how far the last village that you saw. If by chance you break down on the road, you'll want to make your way to the nearest village and see if they have any repair shops, or ask around if one of the locals can take a look at your bike, or point you to the right direction where a repair shop is located. If you do break down, don't panic. You'll probably walk your bike until a passerby can help you push it with theirs. Depending on how long you're riding, you may or may not need to do any maintenance on your ride. But a general rule, you should get an oil change every 500 to 800 kilometers. I didn't get an oil change while doing the loop, but if you're venturing further out to destinations like Cao Bang, you'll probably need to get 1 or 2. journey to this destination is an adventure in itself, with numerous chances of hiking and trekking along the way. But once you arrive, its rugged limestone mountains and picturesque terrace fields will captivate your heart and soul like the many that came before you. Its immense beauty truly captures your imagination. Whether you seek adventure, culture immersion, or simply witness what Mother Nature can create, Leng Khu will leave you spellbound. The region's most iconic feature is its famous flag tower, proudly flying the national flag of Vietnam atop Leng Khu Peak. As you make your way to the flag tower, you'll first ride this iconic stretch of road. This straightaway is pretty nice. I got my bike up to 60 kilometers, which is about 40 miles an hour. So that should give you an idea how slow the traffic is here. I'm not quite sure what this road was built for. I couldn't find any information. If you have any idea, feel free to comment down below. This tower provides visitors with an unfiltered panoramic view of the surrounding countryside of Vietnam, as well as the neighboring steppes of China. The Ly dynasty saw the construction of the flag tower. It was built to denote Vietnam's northernmost point and its crucial role at defending Vietnamese territory. Vietnam designated the tower as a cultural heritage monument in 1994 and has now become a well-liked tourist attraction and a representation of Vietnamese nationalism. Standing at 35 meters and already 1,468 meters above sea level, visitors from around the world can witness this magnificent region in all its glory. At the base of the tower is 8 greenstone reliefs that represent various historical events of the country. And right above it are 8 drums made out of bronze to complement its design. The entrance fee for this site is 25,000 VND, and an optional 15,000 to ride an electric cart to the top of the tower, with parking being 10,000. A short distance away is a Buddhist temple. It was currently under construction during my visit, but this is another place one should go to get another point of view of the flag tower itself. The ride up here is pretty tricky, however, as the pathway is quite rugged. You'll have to navigate uphill through loose dirt and gravel. Just go slow and steady, and by the time you know it, you'll be on top of the hill. I wasn't sure if my bike was going to make it up at first, but the thing I kept in the back of my mind is locals ride these bikes in this type of terrain daily. If they can manage to do it, then it's doable, and that's what kept me powering through.
Here you go.
This is another place where I lost most of the footage, so I don't have much, but it's worth a visit and it's free. It's definitely worth checking out. I did almost fall going back down. There was a bunch of loose rocks that slipped underneath me, but luckily I caught myself before downing my bike. I did have my drone up and tracking me while I was riding down, but that footage was also lost. After this, I made my way to the actual northernmost point of Vietnam. The road there is mostly paved, but there are short segments where it's dirt and gravel, but nothing too intense. I keep harping about this, but the scenery here is just unbelievable. It makes me feel nostalgic about this region. I can spend at least 6 months just riding endlessly through Ha Giang in the northern parts of Vietnam. There are 17 ethnic groups that live in Leng Khu, with many festivals celebrated throughout the year. One should also visit the local markets held in the surrounding areas of the flag tower and try some of the region's specialty dish. Once you get here, there's a lookout point where you can see the borders of Vietnam and China. There's also a store and restrooms available if you need to replenish your sustenance and restock on water. This place was pretty peaceful when I was here. There weren't many people around and the shop seemed to be closing down for the day. I spent about 20 to 30 minutes here before heading out. I can now check this off my bucket list. I regrettably didn't stay the night in Long Cu, but I would recommend a minimum of 2 nights for an optimal visit and exploration. There are several homestays located around Flag Tower. You can find one starting at 100,000 VND or $4 US. If you plan on staying the night, make sure to research and pin the locations on the map beforehand. Vietnam is the country that made me fall in love with motorbiking, and roads like these are the reason why. After sightseeing around Long Cu, I backtracked my way back down to QL4C. It takes about 45 minutes to an hour and a half to reach the main highway. From QL4C, I then made my way to my favorite place in Ha Giang. This ended up being my favorite region because everything just felt right. The weather was overcast once I got into the valley, temperatures were cool, the air was refreshing with a slight breeze, light showers throughout the day with rainfall at night, which made everything lush and green the next morning. The atmosphere was perfect. It felt like I was in my own element, a familiar place in a faraway land. The first stop in Meo Vac is the Leng Pass. Often referred to as the king of passes, Leng is legendary for its challenging hairpin turns and dramatic cliffs through breathtaking panoramic views of its monstrous peaks and deep valleys. It's a popular route for motorbike enthusiasts and adventure seekers, as it's the ultimate test of skill and nerve that reward riders with its natural beauty. This pass was constructed during the 1960s as part of a strategic road network in northern Vietnam. The construction was vital to the military during the Indochina War. The pass provided a crucial link to the Ho Chi Minh Road, which was used as a supply route for Vietnamese forces. A popular attraction here is the Skywalk. It's a narrow road that leads to the viewpoint where one can sit on the ledge overlooking the landscape. You used to be able to motorbike to the top, but has since been prohibited. You now have to park your motorbike at the entrance and walk up to the ledge. It is a common stop for many tour groups, so it can quickly become a tourist trap. So be prepared to wait in line. It was getting busy when I got here and I didn't want to wait, so I decided to enjoy this place without going to the top. If you don't stay in Long Cu, this is another place where you can find lodging. No matter what part of the world I travel to, visiting the countryside always gives me a better appreciation of life. From Leng Pass, the next place I visited was the Nho Que River, about an hour away. Once you've made your way down to the Meo Vac Plateau, you're immediately going to take a U-turn onto 193A. This road will take you all the way down to the river. This portion of Leng is pretty steep with roadwork everywhere. Be cautious going down this segment and don't ride your brakes. While the main highway already provides an alluring sight, Just remember that every detour adds a layer of discovery to your adventure. So make sure to branch out every so often and take that exit or side road you see in your peripheral. Activities you'll find here are boating down the emerald waters, kayaking, swimming, and enjoying the ethereal beauty from a lower angle. Tickets to join a group on a motorboat is 120,000 VND per person. You can also rent an entire boat if you want to avoid being cramped in with a bunch of tourists. Kayak rentals are at 50,000 and parking is 5,000, and the boat ride takes about an hour. Unfortunately, once again, I lost most of the footage here, but this spot shouldn't be missed. It is definitely one of the highlights of the loop. The ticket office and parking is off 193A to the right, but the dock is further away on the opposite side, about 2 kilometers away along the river. Once I finished the tour, I got back on my bike, crossed the river, and made my way further into Sin Tai, towards the border between Vietnam and China. This entire segment of 193A is being modernized, but the further I climbed, the more rugged and uneven the road became. I passed through these small villages and houses that were situated right on the cliffside, which I really found astonishing. At this point of the day, I was pretty fatigued, but I was numb to it, so I didn't really feel it until after the fact. I was on autopilot, I didn't know where I was heading or where this road was taking me. I finally decided to turn back when I reached the front of the construction. I could have kept going, but I decided to turn back as sunlight started to diminish, and I realized there probably isn't lodging further up the road, since the infrastructure is still under construction and the village and houses I passed became more primitive the further up the hill. This was the view of the furthest I got and where I decided to turn back. Vietnam is a rapidly developing country, so much so that it's part of the Tiger Cub economies. Tiger Cub economies referring to economies seeing rapid growth and industrialization with a rising middle class, supply chains, and online commerce in Southeast Asia. This seems to be true not only in its major cities, but also in the countryside. I made my way back down the highway, and by the time I got there, it was twilight. Luckily, not far off the main highway is the Pavi Hmong village. Here you'll find several homestays available. I did stay at the Hmong Lodge homestay, which cost about 250,000 VND per night. It was peaceful, the host was friendly, the room was clean, heated water, and it had Wi-Fi. The people here were great and helpful, to say the least. Myself, this other Vietnamese solo traveler, as well as the host and his friends, shared a family dinner and of course drank local wine.
Cheers. Yeah.
Cheers. We also got to hear this aspiring local musician play a couple of traditional music. I can't say enough good things about this homestay. I would recommend this place to anyone doing the loop. They went above and beyond trying to help me locate my drone, as you'll see what happens the next morning. If you do stay here, mention my name Eddie, and show them this video and they'll probably remember. The atmosphere of this place is impeccable. The night rain made the vegetation lush and vibrant. I woke up around 7 a.m. and decided to fly my drone to capture some of the scenery of this verdant valley. Everything was great up until this happened. I was shooting on telephoto and miscalculated how close the drone was to the surrounding mountain. It ended up hitting a tree and crashing on the mountainside. From the flight data, it said that it crashed around 3,100 feet relative to where it launched. Because of the GPS, I was able to locate the drone, but unfortunately, I wasn't able to reach it. I turned on Find My Drone so it would start beeping and flashing, but from where I was standing, I could faintly hear it. So I went back to the homestay, explained to the family what happened, and a couple of them rode out with me to the location and tried to see if they can find it. But the second attempt was unsuccessful. With the GPS map on my phone, coordinates, and the beeping sound, we tried to pinpoint where exactly it was. It was stuck on a very steep part of the mountain face. They were able to climb higher than I was, but still they couldn't reach it, so we went all back down to the side of the road. About a couple hours has gone by at this point, and I started getting low battery warnings. With the battery dying, they decided to climb higher to see if they can find it. At this point, we still don't even know where it's at. We just had a general area that needed to be searched. This time though, they asked a local farmer that happened to be working on the field across the street. They explained to him the situation, and all three of them climbed up. No ropes, protective gear, or equipment. Free solo type of stuff. I was confident that they'd find it this time since the farmer looked like he climbs these slopes on a regular basis. About 45 minutes of scouring the mountainside, they decided to go back down, unfortunately, again, without finding the drone. The drone battery has died at this time, so there was no more beeping, which made it more difficult to locate. I was pretty bummed out at this point. About 4 hours has gone by, and I didn't want to keep risking their lives climbing this steep mountain. So I told them it was okay that we didn't find it, but they wanted to keep trying, and they were going to pick up their friend for some help. So I stayed here at the side of the road, waited for them until they got back, which was about 20 to 30 minutes. Once they got here, I gave them my phone with a map, made their way as high as possible, and they split up to search for the drone. Again, doing all this with no rope, climbing gear, protection, or anything. Another 45 minutes went by, and one of them yelled out something. I couldn't fully understand what they said because they were too high up. But several minutes later, they went back down, and once they got to the roadside, I didn't see any of them carrying the drone. But I was ready to write this off and continue my journey. I was gonna chalk it up to an expensive gift I'm giving to my favorite place in Vietnam. But as they got closer, one of them reached from behind his back and pulled out the drone. And I'm not gonna lie, I was pretty stoked when he pulled it out of his back pocket. And aside from a missing propeller and another severely damaged, it was still in great condition and flight worthy. What I believed happened is it collided with the tree and it got caught in one of the branches, or a bush broke its fall, leaving it largely with superficial damage. All I had to do was replace the damaged propellers, which I had about 16 replacements with me. The drone didn't have any issues throughout the remainder of my journey in Vietnam. So all in all, my morale and mood was great. After this, we went back to the homestay, I got cleaned up and showered, gave him a parting gift, and continued on my journey. Again, these guys went above and beyond helping me. I can't thank them enough, but if you're ever in Meo Vac, this is the place to stay. By the time I left, it was 1 p.m., so I was running way behind schedule. Since we're on the topic of drones, let's talk about them. Drones, or more commonly referred to as flycams by Vietnamese, are allowed in the country, so you can bring them on your vacation. On paper, you do have to get authorization ahead of time from the Ministry of Defense for each flight you take. You have to fill out a form which takes about 3 to 4 weeks to get approved and costs between $300 to $700 US. It's pretty expensive, but that's on paper. However, on the ground and from experience, Vietnam is one of the most drone-friendly countries I've visited. By and large, my drone experience has been pleasant throughout the country. With that said, use some common sense. Don't fly near or over military complexes and government buildings, don't fly close to people, use line of sight, and so on. I highly recommend taking a drone course and get your license from your home country. If by chance you do get stopped for flying a drone, a common repercussion is paying a fine, usually around 1,500,000 VND, which is about $60 US. From here on out, about 85% of my footage was lost. I first made my way to the capital of Meo Vac, about 15 minutes away. A small quaint town with calm vibes right before an intrepid trail through the mountains. I didn't stay here for long because I was already behind schedule. The town has karaoke bars, night markets, and attractions to see in the surrounding area. One of those is the Meo Vac sinkhole, right outside of town. Locals don't know when it was formed, but they often go down here to get grass to feed their cows. Inside the hole is an extremely diverse ecosystem with lush green vegetation, jagged rocks, and cool air. Standing from below looking up, the sky peeking through the mouth is quite striking. This place is currently not safe for tourism. However, if you want to challenge yourself, make sure to find a local guide to take you along the trail that they often use. It takes about 30 to 45 minutes to climb down through steep trails and rope swings to gradually make your way down the base. It's highly advisable you choose a sunny and dry day for this activity. I wouldn't even consider going during the wet season, as this whole province is prone to flash floods. So yeah, do this at your own risk. From QL4C, I then took the mountainous trail of DT-176 to get to Mao Du. And yes, this is the same DT-176 where I found myself going the wrong way and had to backtrack on the second day. As I made my way outside of town, the roads became more hazardous. And this portion of the loop is all dirt, mud, and gravel filled with road construction. It took me about 2 to 3 hours to pass through this segment. I did see a local get his motorbike stuck in the mud. Once I saw this, I thought I was gonna get stuck somewhere along the way. But fortunately, I was able to navigate through the rough terrain. I did luck out that it didn't rain before or during my journey through this portion. Dirt roads and trails throughout Ha Giang become very soupy after rainfall, right after the many flash floods that occur before it. As with every part of Ha Giang, this region has its own unique characteristic and beauty. While it's still mountainous, it felt open as the peaks were more spread apart from one another. Here, you'll encounter several villages, farms, and roadside coffee. The weather here was sunny with scattered clouds and minimal humidity, with light showers occurring from time to time. As grueling as it was at times riding through mud and uneven terrain, I'm glad I was able to experience it this way, as it may not be the case in the future once all the road work is finished. If you think motorbiking Ha Giang is intense, I did come across a solo female hiker right behind the camera of this shot. At first, I thought her bike broke down over the hill, but she said she's making her way to Meo Vac and she's been hiking from Ha Giang City. I've encountered foreigners motorbiking solo, foreigners on a bicycle, but I've never encountered a solo hiker before, let alone a solo female hiker. And judging from her accent, she's probably German. When I travel, the most common foreigners I meet are usually Australians, but in Vietnam, I met a lot of Germans. I also met a lot of French, British, and Indian. At this point of my journey, I was sore all over and my butt was numb. I did take a break at this coffee shop situated right on a cliff. Don't miss a chance to savor a cup of traditional Vietnamese coffee in these parts, as it is brewed using the iconic Phin filter. It's rich, bold, and often served with sweetened condensed milk, a perfect way to recharge during your exploration. Transiting these parts, I felt as though this region is more rocky compared to other parts of Ha Giang. Once I got some rest, I continued on to Mao Du. I just wish I had all my footage to show from my 360 camera and drone as I navigate these dirt roads. Once I reached Mao Du, I continued to follow DT-176 until I reached this old French fortress in Long Ho. This region used to be under the control of the French commander Lieutenant Colonel Beaufessy. During an inspection visit of the area, he concluded that it needed to be monitored, and so the work to build a military post began. This fortress was constructed from 1935 to 1940. Locals were forced to work as laborers and servants, and anyone who didn't comply was beaten or shot to death. Under the control and enslavement of the French colonialists, people's lives fell into poverty in the district of Yan Minh, at the time known as Dong Tong. On March 9, 1945, the Japanese overthrew the French. Seizing the opportunity, Viet Minh officers in Dong Tong held an emergency meeting, occupied the fortress, and destroyed the warehouse. They then took corn and rice to distribute to the people. From Long Ho to Dut Za, the climate and weather drastically changed. It was colder, with gloomy skies and frequent showers. By the time I reached this valley, the sun was well over the mountains and darkness fell rapidly. After a short visit of the fortress, I continued on with a search of a place to stay. Unfortunately, I didn't reach Dut Za before nightfall and ended up staying at this motel in Long Ho. Actually, I'm not gonna lie, this was the worst place I stayed at in my entire journey of Vietnam. This is where I realized that sandals are an essential thing to have, so you don't have to walk barefoot around the room and bathroom. I wasn't expecting much since it was the countryside, but in hindsight, it was much worse after all is said and done. I completely lost all my footage of this area, including Dut Za, aside from what I'm showing you. But I do have footage of this motel that I stayed at, but I'm not gonna show it because I don't want to single anyone out, as this can happen anywhere you're staying at in the countryside. There are a few reasons why this was the worst lodging experience I had, but the main reason why is because of bed bugs. The next morning I woke up with a bunch of red bumps all throughout my calves. The small bumps and itchiness lasted for about 5 days before completely healing. But this place pretty much ruined motels for me, and I'd much rather stay at homestays from now on. Unless those are the only options. On my last day, I woke up to the sounds of rain. I then packed and headed further down south to Dut Za. It took me about 45 minutes to get here. As mentioned before, most of my footage has been lost. The ones I still have are mostly from my 360 camera. Zotza is another small village situated in a valley engulfed in the vibrancy of lush green fields and farmland. When I reached the village, the first thing I did was get something to eat and drink coffee before heading to a popular waterfall nearby. This is another common stop for tour groups, so it can get crowded. The water was cool, refreshing, and it just felt good floating on water when you're exhausted. I spent a couple hours here before making my way back to Ha Giang city. From Zutza, you can either keep going south until you hit QL 34, which then takes you back to the city. Or you can backtrack up north to Long Hu, then take DT 181 all the way to Nablom. This route is all paved, while the road southbound of Zutza turns into dirt. I was also advised by a local that the road conditions southbounds were worse than usual, since it had been raining constantly in the past few days. Taking all that into account and wanting to spend more time on the loop, I decided to backtrack to Long Hu to take DT 181. Most people that I know don't like motorbiking in the rain, but I do, as long as there's no lightning. From here until I reached QL4C, I rode on rainy conditions. With that said, another essential thing to have is rain gear, or at least a rain poncho. You can either bring one from your home country or buy a rain poncho here in Vietnam. The more you ride the loop, the more you'll appreciate these valleys nestled in between these high peaks. It's a nice break from all the winding roads up and down these mountains. As I mentioned before, a routine is good to have for efficiency. With that, you'll first need to acclimate yourself to the country's schedule. Vietnam is an early bird country. The population by and large wakes up very early, around 4 to 5 a.m. to start the day. I saw many shops and markets opening up while it was still dark out. This will take some time to get used to unless you're a morning person. With that, breakfast, lunch, and dinner are also served early and close early compared to the West. While in bigger cities, one may find places that serve food at any given time, this is not the case in smaller towns, villages, and countryside. Breakfast usually ends around 7 a.m., lunch around 11 a.m., and dinner around 6 p.m., give or take 1 hour. I suggest starting your day around 5-6 a.m., eat breakfast, and leave by 7, 8 at the latest, so you can catch as much sunlight. If you miss your window for eating, then you're gonna starve, and you'll have to wait unless you get lucky and find a place still open or willing to serve you. At times, when the rain started to get heavy, I would try to find shelter on the side of the road, or wait it out at a coffee shop like this. I stayed here for about half an hour, talked to the owner for a bit since he knew English, and served me some tea. Cafes around the country usually serve tea as a complimentary to your order, so I didn't really pay attention to it until he was insistent that I try it. This tea ended up being the best I had in Vietnam, and it just happened to be from the surrounding mountains. When he said that, I thought like a farm like an hour away, but he literally pointed at a peak right outside where it came from. It was smooth, warm, and went well with the coffee. It also energized me through a good portion of this last leg of the loop. So yeah, make sure to check this place out. I recommend it. This and Meo Vac are my favorite valleys. The atmosphere, ambient sounds, and pace of life seem pretty nice. I can wake up to this doing remote work. Only issue would be internet connectivity. After riding through this tranquil valley, the road then ascends into the mountains. This climb felt like it was never ending, but once passed, it will lead you to another peaceful plateau. As you motorbike Ha Giang, common things to look out for and avoid on the road are potholes. While most of the infrastructure in these parts are paved and frequently maintained, constant rainfall and monsoons during the wet season does take its toll, so potholes are quite common. Second thing to look out for are buses, trucks, and other riders. Honk your horn on blind corners, turns, switching lanes, and when passing other vehicles. Traffic in Vietnam, looking behind you seems to be an afterthought. Here, you're largely responsible for what's in front of you, so stay vigilant so you can avoid things on the fly. And you hope the person behind you is doing the same thing, which in most cases they are. Everyone is responsible for what's in front of them. As mentioned a few times, traffic is slow throughout the country, giving you a decent amount of time to react. If this is your first time in Vietnam, observe how the traffic acts so you can acclimate faster and understand it better. It's not all chaos. Third thing to look out for are cow dung. They are common here in Ha Giang and throughout the countryside. Do not underestimate them. They will down your bike, and next thing you know, you have a free tattoo on your arm and legs. The fourth thing you should look out for are road workers and construction. With construction everywhere in the country comes machinery. Things can and will go flying on your face and motorbike, so go slow or wait until they signal you so you can avoid debris. Weed trimmers are also something to watch out for. I passed several of them weed whacking along the road, getting hit with a bunch of grass in the process. After reaching Nam Blom, I then cut south using this road that rides along the low river. This road will lead you straight to QL4C. This segment I experienced significant rainfall, like torrential downpour type of rain. Not only that, but fog and mist started to creep in. Not really ideal conditions for riding, but I wasn't too worried. As long as there's no lightning, I was golden. And luckily, I didn't experience none. I almost ran out of fuel in this area. I was supposed to fill up in Nam Blom, but I forgot. I didn't realize this until halfway through the segment. I didn't see any petrol stations or villages until I reached Abang waterfall. There's this house next to it, and the guy luckily had some petrol. So if you happen to be in a similar situation and you're running on empty, this place has petrol. But it is one of the things I don't like about scooters. Their fuel tank is quite small. You can't venture out too far to desolate places without carrying extra fuel. This really is a non-issue having a scooter doing the loop. Just make sure to check your fuel gauge every so often. My second bike in Vietnam was a Honda 150 with a bigger fuel tank, and that was more ideal to tackle most of the country. But I'll get more into detail with that on another video. However, a 150 and above is probably what I'm going to be riding from now on because of the fuel capacity. As I draw closer to QL4C, the rain starts to subside, the sun peaks, the heat intensifies, as well as the humidity. Almost as though signifying this chapter of my journey is coming to a close. It may only have been 5 days, but it felt like a lifetime of experience sought, earned, and captured in a bottle. Motorbiking this region, I met many people along the way, from locals to foreigners alike, experienced the several different cultures that call this place home, and Mother Nature's countless mind-altering facade. It not only gave me an appreciation and deeper understanding of life in this part of the world, but it taught me a lot about myself, facing the unexpected and being self-reliant in a vast sea of unfamiliarity. If you seek something different, an experience you won't forget, or simply want to wander aimlessly in a completely different scenery, Ha Giang should be on your bucket list. Before you do, however, it's something you should not take lightly, as you'll face the duality of nature, both its beauty and its danger. If you plan on venturing this region on two wheels, know that the Ha Giang loop is not constrained to a specific route. There are many routes one can take to complete the loop, each one specific to the rider. There are two main arteries that make up the loop. The much longer outer loop that goes around QL4C before connecting to QL34 back to Ha Giang City. And the shorter inner loop that cuts through DT176 leading to QL34 back to the city. With that said, you can take any route, side roads, and back trails to make your own personal loop. Anywhere along the main highway takes a full day's ride non-stop back to Ha Giang City, at the most. so you're not that far off anytime you want to go back. Most group tours offer a 3 to 4 day ride. You'll see some of the highlights, but you barely scratch the surface. I did it in 5 days, but even that felt rushed. I recommend a minimum of 7 days, especially if you're going solo without a tour guide. Obviously, the more time, the better. While the loop can be as short as you want, generally, you'd want to at least reach Long Khu before heading back. From there, you can even backtrack on the same road back to the city. But why see the same scenery when you can take alternate routes? Which is why I suggest planning your route before heading here. Planning your route is half the fun. It's well worth it, and you can always veer off once you get here. As I complete the Ha Giang loop, I can now check this off my list. But the adventure in this region continues. There are more roads to conquer, places to see, food to try, cultures to experience, and people to meet. But for now, I head down to the capital of Hanoi, but that will be for another video. If you want to support more content like this, don't forget to like, subscribe, share, and comment down below. Until next time, my friends, travel often, stay cultured. This is Eddie, and I'm out.